Before I removed the rear wheel, I took this brake mechanism off. This brake mechanism is held on by a bolt that runs down through a threaded part right through here. This bolt actually sits down inside a curvature that runs around this splined mechanism that goes into the brake. Before I pulled that mechanism, one thing that I did do to help me get everything aligned when I put this back together is I took a center punch and I made a reference mark right here at the top that lined up with this split. Now, after I had done that, I noticed that there was some other reference mark that was machined into this splined mechanism here. I'm not really sure what that lined up with, but by putting my own reference mark in there, and I just used a center punch, but you could scratch into there with an awl or a screwdriver or something else like that. That helps you get this brake mechanism back in the correct alignment when you put everything back together. If you look here, you can see that concave cutout that goes around the entire circumference of this spline mechanism. And when you put that brake arm on, and the bolt that runs through that holds everything together actually sits inside of that curve. That keeps that from falling off. As I tear into this rear wheel, I'm going to be looking for a couple of things. One of them is the condition of the brakes. And now that I've got this off the bike, I should be able to just lift this out of the way, and we already have our first situation. Here is the pad that sits on the brakes themselves. So that's one thing that's going to have to be replaced, obviously. If this was still attached to that, those brake shoes are in pretty good shape, so I could have gotten away with keeping those. But those are going to have to be replaced. This is a pretty simple setup here. This area right here is where the brake arm attaches, and as you press on the brake, it twists this arm, and it will take this flat end on the other side, and it forces these brake shoes to separate or push against the hub of the wheel itself. The other thing I'm going to be doing in here is, as you can see, it's got some surface rust. That's probably not too big of a concern. And then I'm also going to be checking the condition of these dust seals right here that are supposed to keep the dirt and everything out of where the axle shaft actually runs through the hub itself. So there's not a whole lot to do in here except replace parts that are worn out and clean up parts that need a little bit of attention. Looking a little closer at the rear brakes, these brakes need to be replaced. This pad fell right off as I disassembled that rear hub. It's a pretty simple setup. There are two springs that hold these brake pads in place, and really the only thing that's keeping them from moving around is this being inside the hub and this little stem here with that flattened top that keeps those shoes from falling off. There are a couple of ways that you can remove these. One of them is you can take a pair of needle nose pliers and work these springs out of one side, therefore releasing one of the shoes. Another option, which is probably, I think, what we'll do right here, is we'll just open these up and gradually work these shoes up and over. And you can see that once I got them up and over that stem, there's no more pressure on the spring, and with the springs intact, they actually kind of come out as a unit. So now I can just remove each pad from this spring, and we'll take a quick look at the springs. If we look at the springs, they're both the same. If they were different, I would want to keep track of which one was on the pin here and which one of them was actually on the braking mechanism. But those are the same, so we don't have to worry about that. I'm going to keep these around until I get the new ones so that I can make sure that they send me the correct part. So one thing I like to do is hold on to the old part until you know the new replacement is a match. On this hub here, this is that splined mechanism that comes through. Now we can pull that out and we can clean that up. So to summarize what I've done here on this rear hub, I first started with this wire wheel on the die grinder, and if you don't have a die grinder you can certainly use a drill. But I went around the inside of this drum and I thought that was going to be sufficient, but I wasn't happy with the results. It was still discolored, I still had some rust on here, and it was creating kind of an irregular surface, so I knew that wasn't going to be good. So I hit it with some sandpaper. This is probably in the 320, 340 range as far as the grit. Buffed those down, got it nice and smooth, finished it up with a quick rub down with this Scotch-Brite material, or you could use emery cloth or even a piece of sandpaper that was a higher grit. The other thing I did while I was in here, I wanted to check the condition of these seals. There's one just like this on the other side. And I wanted to check the condition of the bearings. I wanted on those bearings just to make sure that they were still rotating freely and smoothly. There wasn't any play side to side. Both bearings seem to be in really good shape, so I'm not going to monkey with pulling those apart. The last thing I did was notice that there was some surface rust on the tube that sits between the two bearings. So I kind of created my own sanding tool to get down inside of there, and this is just a 1/4 inch rod that I've got here in my drill, and on the end of it I took a piece of that Scotch-Brite material and I duct taped it, and basically what I've done here is created a flapper disc. So I was able to place this down inside that tube, turn it on, and then just run it back and forth, and you can see the way the direction of the drill is spinning, it just circles around itself, creates a nice sanding surface. So that's about it on this rear hub, minus some cleanup and some more elbow grease, trying to get this all polished up and pretty. Thanks for watching.